Welcome to this edition of Soul of Warren County. I'm your host, Mickey Gwynn. The American Legion is a national organization that was started after World War I. Today we're going to be talking about a local chapter of the American Legion, Post 208. In the studio with me today I have the Post Commander, Wayne Wolford Sr., and a longtime member, C. Roy Curtis. Guys, thanks for being with us and welcome to Soul of Warren County.
Thanks for having us.
Wayne, tell us a little bit about the national organization of the American Legion. Why did the American Legion get started?
Well, the American Legion got started because basically after the war, we had to have some kind of accountability for veterans. After the war, when they went to war, then they came home and that was it. There was no organization to protect them, no organization that would help them for as disabilities and stuff like that. So it was put together then for that purpose and for helping the veterans and the families. And one of the main things they really concentrated on were the children of the family, because if once you're gone, there's no spouse in the household that could take care of the family. So American Legion stepped in and helped that big time, and it's still going strong right now, but not because of the youth. It's because of the older ones in here now.
And why do you think it's just because the younger military members or veterans don't see a need to be in organizations like the American Legion, or why do you think it's that way?
I think it's that way because the younger people have found more things to do. The younger veterans.
Right.
Back in the day, we had more camaraderie. We would go to the halls and the American Legion and VFW posts and so forth, talk about what happened during those times, because we could communicate with one another, but we didn't actually go and talk to people outside that hadn't been in the military, because we didn't feel like that was, appropriate or congenial, because of all the things that a lot of veterans saw during that time, hardships and stuff.
And we were talking about the local chapter 208. Is there some history with the local chapter too, Roy? You want to talk a little bit about how the local chapter, the local post became, I guess, 1943, I think, right?
I think it's 1943. It was actually organized. And I think along about 1945, I think Mr. Spencer actually built what we call is a hall, and that's kind of how it got started. And I researched, Holston Jennings Post 208 as far as the guys it was named after, and because I just like to know, who these people are, who their families were, because as far as I know, I don't know anybody that when I grew up here that was named Jennings or Holston, so I'm not familiar with those names. So actually I did some research initially to find out, who these guys were. Because to me, it's real important to, recognize these veterans and don't forget about them. A lot of these old guys, that served, like, our fathers and uncles and stuff, a lot of people don't know who they are. So we need to know. So that's kind of my impetus to go and research. I think the guy's name was Ashbury Holston, and the other guy's name was Odie Falls Jennings, and that's what Post 208 was named after.
So obviously they were local military folks from during that time.
Okay. And that's a lot of history. Jennings. Odie Jennings, Falls Jennings, actually was a student when he registered for the Tennessee National Guard in what was then they called A&I Normal School. That's actually where he registered at. And later on, he, according to the records, he was in Fisk University. And actually, that's where the history kind of starts. The guy was actually, he was in the early 20s, I think, when he was at Fisk. And this is in 1918, so it's been a while back. Right. And if you remember, they had what they call a Spanish flu pandemic back then. and he actually got sick, and he went to the hospital, and he died as a result of that. You know, he got the flu, he caught pneumonia, and they would call it, I think, bacterial pneumonia. Back then, they didn't have penicillin, so, you know, he died.
Oh, okay.
And the Holston guy, Asbury Holston, kind of had the same fate. He was in the Army as well. And during the pandemic, you know, he caught the flu and pneumonia, and he died. But some of the family, the Jennings family, his father's name was Bolin Jennings, and his mother's name was Betty Jennings. And of course, he had a son named Odie. And of course, like I said earlier, I didn't, you know, those names not familiar to me, but I went on and researched. The older Jennings actually died when Odie was young.
Oh, okay.
And she remarried. And she married a guy named Peter Robertson. And they had a daughter, which kind of comes familiar probably with some of y'all too. Her name was Sadie Robertson. Robertson, and you know, that's a familiar name here. Anyway, she married a guy named Howard Martin. Is it coming kind of clear now?
Oh, yeah.
Howard Martin. And they had a son. Guess who they named him? Odie. So, you know, that's the connection for that family. Which you can kind of, you know, you see where the connections are now, the family line. And the Holstons is kind of the same way. Ashbury's Holston's father's name was Isom Holston. Of course, that name's not familiar to me either. I don't know if anybody, you know, around here name is named that. But anyway, he married a lady named Emma Bates, which that name is real familiar here.
Right, right.
And Emma Bates had a large family. One of her siblings' name was Sam Bates. And guess whose children Sam Bates are? The elder Ben Bates. So Emma and Sam were brothers and sisters. And of course, we all know, I don't know where you know the elder Ben Bates. I don't know where y'all knew him or not, but I did. I knew him and his wife.
I didn't.
But anyway, you probably know his son.
Oh, yeah.
The younger Ben
four.
Bates.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's how these guys are connected. And I always like to know, you know, the families of these folks, you know, where they come from, who they're related to. But now, you know, I know that, you know, the Bates and the Roberts, and, you know, they are local names, and these two men were connected to these families. And, you know, I don't know where the families, some of the younger families probably didn't even know either one of these guys.
Right.
But, you know, that's kind of some of the history behind the name of the Post 208.
Yeah, thanks for that history. I knew some of that, but I didn't know all. You did your research.
Yeah, that's just the thing I like to do, you know.
You know, it's sort of interesting though. The American Legion was chartered by act of Congress after World War I. Of course, during World War I, the military was still segregated.
Right.
World War II comes along, the military becomes integrated, but it seems like still with some of our organizations, our veteran organizations, whether it's VFW, American Legion, whatever, seems to still be sort of segregated. Is there a reason for that? Is it because we feel more comfortable with our own, or what do you think?
I just the way it was back then, you know. When my father served, and, you know, our relatives served in World War I and World War II, when they got out, I mean, it was still Jim Crow.
Right.
So, you know, everything was still segregated. You know, you were here and somebody else was over here, so you didn't have really a choice. So if you wanted to, you know, have an organization where men could actually, ex-military veterans could, you know, socialize, you had to have your own, because you couldn't go, you know, to the majority, you know, organization. So that's kind of how, it wasn't because it didn't want to go, it was just the way it was back then.
You mentioned about American Legion versus the VFW. For people who may not know the difference, can you be a member of both?
You can now.
Okay.
You can.
Okay, you say now. Okay,
it used to be, they want warm bodies now.
Okay.
Because both organizations, American Legion and VFW, are falling down. So they're taking warm bodies now. But before, you had to be a veteran of a foreign war.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly when it started, but it wasn't too awfully long ago.
So when you say a veteran of a foreign war, does that mean you had to actually be in the AOR of that
Right,
war, you couldn't
yes.
be stateside,
Right.
and there's a war going on in,
Right.
say,
Right.
Vietnam or Europe or whatever.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, okay. So,
I actually had to serve in the theater.
okay, okay, that makes sense. Um, you were talking about the young people and things of that nature. Do you think the issues during the Vietnam War had an effect on organizations like the American Legion and VFW? You know, there was a time during the Vietnam conflict where military people were sort of looked down on. You know, there's many incidents of them coming back and being spit on and things of that nature. Do you think that had an impact on some of these organizations of some of those Vietnam era veterans maybe just didn't want to be part of these organizations?
Yeah, it was kind of a different time. I can remember when I got out. I don't think I even wore my uniform home because, you know, all this was going on at the time. A lot of protests, you know, people were upset with the war. And it was just a bad time to be a veteran.
Right.
Because people didn't really look at you like, that you served your country. And you didn't feel like, people appreciated the service that you give them. So I think maybe that, the veterans then just kind of didn't want to, be a part of something like that. And over time, like myself, over time, your values kind of change and you see what the benefit is, not only personally, but, it benefits a lot of other guys that you, especially belong to an organization like the American Legion or the VFW. You learn a lot about the benefits that veterans have that you didn't know if you hadn't joined the organization. So I think later on the veterans kind of, moved into the organization because they really saw the benefit and they could help somebody else.
Does it bother y'all that we have fewer and fewer members of Congress who have military backgrounds? That's been an issue that's come up in the last couple of elections that, back years ago, there seemed like there'd be a lot more congressmen, whether state level or national level, that had military backgrounds. You don't see many veterans serving in Congress anymore. And I just wonder, do you think that has had some impact on national organization? I know that a lot of the candidates go out to the national conventions and speak and things of that nature, but do you think our leaders sometimes have problems relating to these military people now? I've even heard people complain about the benefits veterans get, and having their own sort of system of hospitals and things of that nature. Do you think in some aspects organizations like the American Legion and the VA benefits are under attack a little bit because we don't have that cover in Congress anymore?
They are, because we went to a meeting last night and some of that was brought up to where we want to be the one, I guess is what they're saying now, and that covers a lot of for us suicide and so forth, buddy system, calling people that are home and you can hear them being depressed and everything. But the key thing is for VFW and American Legion, that's why really American Legion needs numbers, because they can go to the legislation and get more for as benefits and for as anything to help veterans out. And that, like you say, if a person hadn't been in the military, they have no idea. And so what we have to do, we have to push that idea strongly in order to get the benefits that we're looking for. Otherwise, we're going to lose all our benefits because they're the ones that make the policies and procedures. And if they don't cover it, we're lost. As simple as that.
That is true.
Now, the former post that's out in the Leesburg community, I hear it's still there. It's a little overgrown and things of this nature. So now y'all meet at the Black History Museum. Y'all have y'all meeting. Has there been any discussion about possibly either trying to resurrect the old hall, as we called it, or is that something that's probably just not feasible?
It's not feasible, even though we went all the way to Fayetteville last night, and the place was packed. It was about maybe 100, 120 there maybe. But the thing of it is, you look around the room, nobody there was under 50, 50 years old.
Right.
And so by the VFW, by the American Legion, by 170, American Legion Post 173, they're all meeting at eating facilities and places like that because they can't sustain enough members to have a post. And when you're doing something, anything you're doing, you have to have that interest. You have to have people interested enough to come in and do something. And see, by being vets, what is there to do, you know? There's a bunch of stuff to do, but you have to have doers to do it. If you just have people come in, socialize, and talking about this and that, it's going to fall apart. And that's what's happening now. And the younger ones don't have anything to really jump up and down about coming to a meeting or joining. They just don't see the benefits as profitable for them. So they just basically stay away.
Do you have any ideas of maybe what would draw the younger people in? Do they look at the American Legion as sort of the old folks
Yeah.
organization?
Yeah, yep, they do. And again, it takes doers. And even with the leaders of American Legion Post, even our post, I've always tried to come up with something, but it's just so hard. It's like the museum. It's just so hard to get people interested enough in a particular thing. There's not a lot of people really interested in going to a museum. So there's not a lot of people interested in joining American Legion because it's not whoopee-doo to them, so to speak.
But I think the difference in maybe comparing the museum to like the American Legion is the American Legion is a little bit more focused group because you got to have that military background,
Right.
things of that nature. It just seemed like sometimes we go through that cycle of, if you're the it thing to do, you ain't got to worry about people. Everybody's gonna come see you. But if you're not got that it thing, whatever that
Right.
may be, I mean, I don't know what that would be in the case
Right.
of something like the American Legion. But you just think about, well, what would draw that younger crowd in?
Right.
But I think a lot of it goes back to, Wayne, what you mentioned earlier. There's far more, and I don't want to call it distractions, there's far more things to do these days than going back to when the Post started here. We didn't have the games, the electronic games
Right,
and videos
right.
and even TV. I mean, we may
Right.
have had 2 or 3 channels back. Even I remember there was only 3 channels on the TV.
Right.
So that was sort of place that people went to socialize. That's where they got out.
it
and
was.
there
Something
was
to
events
do.
going.
Yeah.
Something to do. Now it seems like you got just so much more to do. It's just a hard,
Yeah.
hard sell, I guess, to try to get people to come in unless there's something you can come up with that's going to draw people in. And you don't, I guess you don't want to get away from your purpose just to draw people in.
Right.
You just don't want to have a bunch of numbers and people aren't really giving anything to the organization. So I'm sure it's tough. And I agree. We're having the same issues at the museum on what can we do to draw people in. It just makes it tough in this environment.
Yeah, I always thought if we could do a little better about information.
Communication, yeah.
Yeah, the information that
Gotcha.
we have as an organization to pump it out there to those guys that don't know. Now, there's a whole lot of benefits for us as veterans. And people, I like to say, people come to church sometimes because you got food, right? They don't eat, right? So, that's a lot of benefits that these young veterans are not aware of. And if we could just get that information out to them, there's, homelessness, a lot of people, veterans are homeless, and, they're sick, or that maybe even got hurt or sick while they were in the service, and they don't know that they can go, file claims and, to get the VA to help them along with whatever issue they have. And that may be something that, we could do to kind of draw the younger veterans in. Hey, this is something here can benefit you and your family. Not only you, but your family too. So maybe that's something that,
Maybe we can come up with some kind of program, this modern day program now that would interest younger ones, and let them take charge of it. Not just come in, let them take charge of it. This is your baby here. Hey, run with it. And then, seeing if that gift, as we talked about, would take it and go,
And that's kind of, I got involved with the VA myself. I didn't really know when I got out. I didn't know anything about the VA because nobody told me. But I talked to Charlie Luss. It's been a few years ago.
Right.
And he said, man, you filed any claims with the VA? And I said, no, of course, I didn't know about it. And he actually, met me with this guy in Manchester at the time. I think he's passed on since, and actually filed a claim. And of course, that got the ball rolling. So I didn't know that until he told me. So, information is powerful when you have it.
Because I know, growing up in a town like McMinnville, with us all being veterans and all, that was always a very viable option. I mean, if you didn't have sort of a direction in life, in my case, I didn't have the money to go to college, I really wanted to go to college, you know, the military was always an option. But I guess sometimes when you come back, if you start to get into a different type of career, you sort of, your military background starts to fade away. You know, yeah, I was in it for a few years, but I went on and did this or that or the other. But I think sometimes that's what it takes. And maybe sometimes it almost takes going one-on-one with people, you know, trying to do a mass sort of advertising campaign. You know, people look at it and say, okay, but if you sit down and maybe talk to them, because I've had some of the same experience when I worked for the VA after I retired from the Air Force. A lot of people would come up to me and say, well, Mickey, what can I do? Can I do this and that and the other? And I'm like, well, I didn't work in benefits. You probably know more about what your benefits are than I did. But I knew there was somebody to go to. And I think that's really important to be able to let people know that, you know, I may not have all the answers, but we can find people that have the answer. But it seems like you almost need to do that one-on-one conversation with people to try to draw them in. But I think, you know, the issues that you're having in the American Legion, I say you, I'm part two, but we're having in the American Legion and other things is sort of reminiscent. If you look at say, church, you know, churches are having a hard time drawing people to come in on Sundays and things of that nature. And that used to be, as you know, back in the day, you went to church, you know, that just was part of it. So I guess as times have changed, things like that is just a little bit harder sell because of all the other options that people have out there now.
Now, we might be able to help out a little bit with the auxiliary.
Yeah,
now,
talk about the auxiliary.
That's the other portion of it that could really help out because the auxiliary consists of basically females. And they would see the suffering or they see the hardship or the happiness, giving a birthday party to veterans, the veterans' kids and stuff like that, setting up for weddings, Christmas time, go to Murfreesboro and give presents and so forth, and then put them on a couple of buses and bring them down here and have a dinner, you know, here in McMillan. That's the way it was then. Things were kind of going at that time. There was a lot of communication, a lot of people getting together. But now, we don't have a auxiliary right now at the present, and that's one of the lost features for us. You know, I mean, we talked about it last night at the meeting about baseball teams and so forth. The American Legion, the National American Legion, is so set for as money is concerned, to where we, you know, even Post 173 had a baseball team here for years, but it costs a fortune to have a baseball team, even Little League now. And they asked, why is this happening? Well, you're not getting as many members, so you're not getting as much funding. So, things like that, that get people interested. Having a Little League, sponsor a Little League team, but it costs a fortune to do that. And we don't have that kind of money right now, We've got a fundraiser, we help people out. What we've done locally, we've helped a veteran that had a small trailer and he didn't have any heat, so we got him went over here to the store over here and got him a compressor, and got that done. And some of the members in the American Legion picked a nonprofit, and we would give a check once a month there for a while. We were giving it to a senior center. Of course, they got a nice organization now, but then they weren't. Then we had Young Men United, we had Kids of the Community, we had a Hope Center, and then we helped the recovery for drug people. So, we were giving back to the community. But while doing this, we weren't producing any funds to fill our void, in our accounts. So just recently, we did have a fundraiser that put us kind of back up there where we're supposed to be, and that's a good thing. Right. But we do want to get to the point to where we're looking into, right now, especially helping veterans that's homeless and that want to do, not the ones that just want to get a little money and then go on. We want to help them get on their feet again, So that's going to be one of the newer projects we're working on. But we also, again, we need auxiliary. I think that would be a big push for us.
Yeah, I can remember my mom. She was a member of the auxiliary. My dad was, a member of 208. And like you said, they would have veterans from Murfreesboro and Nashville come up they'd have a big dinner, and they provided, you know, all the food and stuff for them to eat. And of course, like you say, you compare it to the church, you know, women are an integral part of the church. You know, if they can't move without the women, and I guess, you know, in other organizations, they'd be a big help as well, especially at the, you know, the American Legion, if we had one.
Is there any thought about trying to get the auxiliary back together, or is it just?
I'm sorry, for a while there, I think, yeah, when I got out, I came back, and we didn't have auxiliary at that time, so I was at the point to where I had 29 people. I was the commander at that time. I had 29 auxiliary at that time. But what was so weird and sorry about that was, we were having a meeting in one room, and the women were having auxiliary was having it in another room, and one of the lead ladies came over. Said, Wayne, look here, you need to come over here and talk to us, help us out. What's that? Went over, man, there was so much bickering and carrying on. I'm saying, oh, ladies, come on, calm down. Look, it's not that bad and so forth. And from that point there, I tried to mellow them out, but they just dwindled and dwindled. And next thing you know, it was only a couple. And so that's been years ago. It probably could be an advantage to get back in it again, but you have to cut off that devil's head before it starts. And something happened there that just messed everybody up.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so when you ask me about the auxiliary, it's kind of hard. I got some still memories of that, you know, because I thought it was going so well,
Right,
you know.
right.
They were going to nursing homes and helping out and everything. I mean, wow, it was jumping off good. Then all of a sudden it whoop. I said, wow. So.
Now I know the American Legion has like annual memberships. Does the local organization get all of those funds from the membership, or does some of that go nationally and then you get a portion? How does that work?
Right now they went up. It was $31. We were one of the lower brackets,
Okay.
and we only charge $31 a year.
Okay.
Okay, and we also have what they call paid for life, but it's even if you're in your 80s, it's like $400, and you compare $31 a year to somebody that's 80 years old compared to $400.
Right.
And all that money goes to national.
Okay.
Okay, so what we do is when we're paying $38 a month now. It's a new thing they just started.
Okay.
And so we get $3 back from each one that goes in. That's what we get. And this is my first time saying this to basically anybody outside. What we did was we figured we had one guy that we wanted to do paid up for life, and he was in his 80s. And it was pretty close to $450 for him to be a full member. And I said, well, let's take this $450 and see how many people we can go out and get free for the first year. And we got 14 people, 14 new members. You know, that was about a year and a half ago. But I didn't want to do it to where I do that every year, you know.
Right.
But that really made us look good at that particular time, because we got 14 members compared to this one that we just paid up for life, you know, and he's in his 80s. So that was, none of the other posts I don't think have hit on that yet. But yeah, it looked good for us at that time. But I mean, even $38, you know, and some of our members live in California, they live in St. Louis, live in different places. And, you know, they don't come to the meetings, but they're still a part of the American Legion. So we have our meetings. We're trying to kind of keep things going. And I'm sorry to say I've been the commander for like 28 years, but I'd hate to let it go to somebody that might let it go, because this is still part of our history in Warren County. Yeah. And, you know, I've got records. Some of the other people had records, and they kept them, and so I collected them. And so we still got records of some years way back, you know. So that's kind of neat. We got the actual charters and so forth notified in my book and another book where the actual charter members, you know, were, and, you know, where they lived and everything. So that's sweet. That's the part that I'd hate. I'd hate for us to lose the history of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we could merge with somebody, but we're still going strong. We still have different flavors in our organization, you know, so it's not just a predominantly black organization. So, you know, things are going pretty smooth right now.
So what's the main source of funding? Is it fundraising activities?
This year, it was a fundraiser.
It was a fundraiser. Okay.
But before then, my dear friend, Doug Milner, he was the man.
Oh, okay.
So anytime I needed funding, it was nothing to give $2,000 a year for that. And we didn't spend a whole lot because we didn't really go out there and do a whole lot of spending, acting crazy, you know. So we had a little money in savings and a little checking. So, I mean, we're still sustainable. And another thing I would kind of like to do, and maybe talk to the members about it, is getting something on some of the graves for the members that were 208. That's permanent, not something to put in there and then weed whacker or whatever cuts it out and so forth, but something to put on each, you know, stone. And I think that would be great if we could take some of our funds and do that. And that way when people go to the cemeteries, they'll know, oh, American Legion Post 208, you know, even if it didn't exist at the time they're looking at it, they can say, oh, wow, okay. And then they probably do some research on it and see what it's about.
I want to talk a little bit about growing up as a young person. I knew the genesis of the hall, but as a young person growing up, I sort of viewed the hall as a place you go party. You know, that's where they had the party. That's where you went after the Rockets baseball games on Sundays, that kind of thing.
That's true.
I knew it was affiliated with the American Legion, but it seemed like the building itself started to sort of transform into more of a entertainment venue. Do y'all remember? I mean, was that sort of that way to y'all growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it was around when I grew up and long before, you know, I came on the scene. And, you know, the small towns don't have a lot of venues that you can actually go to and get entertained. And also, it was like a fundraiser too, you know, raise money by having different events. And I don't know if most people my age will remember people like Jimmy Church and you know, would come and they'd have a dance and, you know, people from everywhere would come. I mean, you couldn't hardly get in the place. And, you know, that's kind of how the hall got established because of those kind of venues. Jimmy Church and what's the other, Johnny Jones, I think the guy that played the guitar, I think they all came, and I mean, it was really a big deal back then. Of course, I was really, really young back then, but I mean, that was one of the places that you could go and kind of let your hair down, you know.
Yeah.
And like you say, after the ball games, playing with the Rockets, we'd come to we didn't have a shower room or anything, so we'd have our uniforms on, all that red clay where you've been sliding around and carrying on. And if you had a double hitter, you were really sweaty and funky during that time. But you come in and put that quarter in the jukebox, because we didn't have anybody turning tables, and people were drinking beer and stuff like that. And so, and you could communicate and talk with some of the players that you played with, you know. And so once they did this, and other towns around Sparta, Manchester, places like that, they basically had the same type thing, but they had clubs, and they would come, and that's how we got to socialize, because if there was, like you say, Jimmy Church in Tullahoma, everybody go to Tullahoma that day, you know, and then if it was somewhere else or some of the modern, better bands, they'd be in one location, everybody go there. So it was a clique, you know, so it was almost like a little chilling circuit, you know.
Yeah. And actually, that was what I remember growing up, was that aspect of it. I didn't know the true history. Do you see anything like that coming back, or is that bygone days as far as maybe having, you know, bands come in? Well, you sort of did that with the fundraiser, I guess, a little bit, Wayne.
Yeah, as far as the fundraiser is concerned, that helped. It wasn't a club, but still, you know, people really appreciated veterans, you know, and they showed their respect more so with finance than they did with warm bodies, you know, because this was the first time. And so again, if we do this again, hopefully that it'll be bigger and better, and we can help more people or finance maybe greater amounts, you know, to help people. So this, the main thing that I'm looking at for us in American Legion Post 208, we're veterans giving back, you know, and we do need support, you know, any kind of support that people can give us, if they want to do it on a monthly basis or if they want to do it a yearly basis or whatever. Yeah, we will definitely accept that, and we will put it to good use. We don't have a car, we don't have a club, So you don't have to worry about we don't have to pay for car insurance or cars or anything like that. All the money goes to help benefit people. So we just veterans giving back.
Does a local 208 at one time had an honor guard, but we don't have the honor guard there anymore?
No, we don't.
Okay. Okay.
And even the ones that's 173 and VFW, they're at the point now that most of them are basically in their 70s.
Right.
I don't think there's anybody in their 60s doing that now. And that's a beautiful thing that they're doing. But still, you know, it just, it tells you something about where we're heading.
Yeah. And I guess that would probably be your primary concern, is trying to increase membership to keep things going.
Keep it real close to the membership, yeah. Try to keep somewhere around 30, you know, at least for us, you know.
Right.
So
There's an issue now. I mean, back during my time, the draft, and of course the big worlds, 1 and 2, I mean, they drafted folks.
Right.
Now, you know, it's all voluntary, and you don't have as many people to pick from. You know, it's a lot of people, you know, in their 20s and 30s that, you know, they probably ain't know nobody been in the military. So, you know, you got a lot smaller group to draw from now than we had, say, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Sure. Yeah, could imagine so. So Wayne, if somebody wanted to get more information about American Legion Post 208, how would they do that?
well, one thing they can, if you're familiar with me, period, you can get into the website. We don't really have a website for American Legion, but I can get you through to them and the organization by wolf32@charter.net. That's WOLF number 32@charter.net. And you can reach me at area code 931-212-6609. And if I can't help you, I can get you the help. That's the key. And you know, you don't have to be a member that comes to all the meetings and everything. If you just want to be a part of it, that's fine. We will do that too, because we do have members that are pretty far out of town, different states and so forth, but they're still part of the organization. So that's a good thing. And we take all kind of ideas. We don't bypass anybody's ideas. We listen and try to see how well we can organize this and make this a better organization.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming in today. Roy, thank you especially for that history lesson. I appreciate that. As you say, it sort of ties things together as you bring the generations up. So really appreciate that. And y'all come back to see us.
All right.
All right.
All
All right.
right.
Appreciate your service.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And thank you for joining us today. Please join us for the next edition of Soul of Warren County. Until then, this is Mickey Gwynn. Make today and every day a great day.